Imagine this. You just sold your company.
Right. The ultimate dream.
Exactly. The wire transfer hits, your bank account suddenly has like $20 million in it. You've officially won the ultimate game of capitalism.
Out at the beach.
You'd think so. But the very next morning, you wake up and just fall into this deep, crushing depression.
Which is incredibly common, actually.
Right. But why? I mean, why do business owners who achieve the absolute pinnacle of financial success often feel like their world has just ended?
It's a fascinating tension to explore.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, you and I are taking on the role of awards evaluators, and we're looking at an industry that is currently navigating this exact paradox.
Yeah, we have the source material for the 2026 Excellence in Exit Planning Awards. And our mission today is to rigorously analyze the nominees for the highly coveted Thought Leader of the Year award.
Which is going to be handed out at the Exit Planning Summit down in Nashville, right?
Yeah, that's the one. And evaluating thought leadership is notoriously difficult. If you aren't careful, it just devolves into a simple popularity contest.
Yeah, for sure. Because usually, success in business is binary. Did you hit the sales target? Did you increase the profit margin?
Right. It's measurable.
It's like a track meet. The stopwatch doesn't lie. But thought leadership, that's a landscape of ideas and influence. It's murky. So what are the actual parameters we're using to judge these nominees?
Well, the official criteria established by the Exit Planning Institute, or EPI, draw a very distinct line in the sand.
Okay, let's hear it.
To win, a nominee must be a champion of initiatives, ideas, or plans that take ideas from strategy to action.
Strategy to action. Got it.
Furthermore, they must act as a recognized leader in the space. What we know for a fact, based on these rules, is that it's not just about having a clever philosophical theory.
Right. You actually have to do something with it.
Exactly. It is about operationalizing that theory to move the entire profession forward.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because you, as the listener, know that true thought leadership changes the gravity of an industry. It alters how people do their jobs.
Definitely.
So we are not handing out participation trophies today. We are going to rigorously grade 3 very distinct nominees. That's Todd Yeiter, Kristen Carlson, and Jerome Myers.
And we're going to evaluate them across 7 specific dimensions.
Yeah. We'll separate the verified facts from what we can naturally deduce, score them out of 10, and make a rock-solid prediction on exactly who will win.
To do that fairly, we need to understand the distinct core case each nominee brings to the table.
Because they're all so different, right?
What's incredible about this lineup is that they all operate in the exact same exit planning industry, yet they attack the central problem from wildly different angles.
So where do we start?
To see the full picture, we should start at the macro level. Let's look at Todd Yeiter. The established profile we have on Todd is that he is the director of life insurance and annuity wholesaling at Thrivent Financial.
Which is a massive Fortune 500 company.
Huge. And factually, his entire focus is anchored in the heavy structural mechanics of an exit.
The nuts and bolts.
Right. We're talking tax efficiency, product strategy, and comprehensive financial advice. He acts as this crucial bridge connecting financial advisors on the ground with high-level corporate leadership.
And his core philosophy seems to be built around, well, a ticking clock.
Oh, absolutely.
The source material notes he is intensely focused on the fact that roughly $14 trillion in business value is going to be changing hands in the coming years as the baby boomer generation retires.
$14 trillion. The sheer scale of that wealth transfer is almost unfathomable.
It's hard to even wrap your head around.
Yeah, and because of that scale, his philosophy centers on an undeniable reality. No single advisor can handle the complexity of these transitions alone.
Right.
Todd argues that success requires listening carefully and proactively bringing in outside specialists to manage the fallout.
Okay, so if exit planning is like building a massive, highly complex skyscraper, Todd sounds like the ultimate general contractor.
That's a great way to put it.
He isn't necessarily the guy swinging every single hammer, but he makes sure the structural engineer, the master electrician, and the legal compliance officer are all in the room before the concrete gets poured.
Exactly. That's a vital role.
But I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Is being a great collaborator and a highly effective corporate director the same thing as being a thought leader?
Well, that is the pivotal question.
Yeah.
And it requires us to separate what is explicitly in the text from what we can infer.
Okay, what are the facts?
What we know for a fact is that Todd has undeniable ironclad credibility. He has been with Thrivent since 2002.
Wow. Over 2 decades.
Right. And he holds half a dozen of the absolute highest level tax, wealth and insurance certifications you can possibly attain. CPO, CFP, CHFC, and the list goes on.
Seriously heavy credentials.
This isn't just an alphabet soup of letters. It represents unquestionable technical mastery over the mechanics of wealth transfer. He has the institutional authority to speak on these matters.
I don't doubt his technical chops for a second, but reading between the lines, what is his actual impact on the ideas of the industry?
Based strictly on the provided text, the logical deduction is that his public-facing footprint is much lower than you typically expect for a thought leader nominee.
Interesting. So he's more behind the scenes.
The inference here is strong. The source heavily highlights his internal wholesaling and his corporate titles like Regional Vice President, Director of Product Marketing.
Right.
However, there is no mention of him creating original public frameworks, hosting an industry podcast, or engaging in external speaking tours.
Ah, I see.
His influence is undeniably massive, but it appears to be entirely internally focused within the thriving ecosystem.
That makes a lot of sense. He's moving mountains, but he's doing it behind the corporate curtain. He's ensuring the structural money is handled properly.
Precisely.
Now, while Todd focuses heavily on bringing the right external team together, our next nominee flips the script entirely. She focuses on fixing the internal operations of the business owner themselves.
All right, that brings us to Kristen Carlson. She is the founder of Focal Point Coaching.
Okay.
The cornerstone of her case is her target audience. Factually, she helps business owners who feel completely trapped by their own companies.
Oh man, that is so common.
Her stated mission is to take these owners from being owner-dependent to enterprise-ready.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She is tackling the classic entrepreneur's curse.
The gilded cage.
Yes. Imagine you start a business, you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into it for a decade, and suddenly you realize you haven't built a company. You've just built yourself a high-stress 80-hour-a-week job that you can never take a vacation from.
Because if you leave, the whole thing falls apart.
Exactly. If you leave, the business collapses. Kristen's entire methodology is about shifting the owner from being the operator pulling the levers on the machine to being the engineer who designs the machine to run without them.
It is incredibly practical.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the facts of how she achieves this, she integrates some very established, proven systems.
Like what?
Well, the text explicitly mentions her use of the value acceleration methodology, DISC behavioral assessments, and strategic planning frameworks.
Wait, let's break that down for a second. Using something like DISC, which is, a personality and behavioral assessment tool, how does that actually help an owner stop being trapped?
Because if you want to step away from your business, you have to build a successor team you trust.
Makes sense.
You can't just hand the keys to anyone. DISC helps the owner understand the communication styles and decision-making behaviors of their employees.
Oh, so it's about fit.
Right. It allows them to scientifically slot the right people into the right leadership roles, which creates the operational redundancy required for the owner to finally walk away.
That is brilliant.
Her guiding philosophy is that an exit isn't just a financial transaction at the end. It's a fundamental transformation where the owner becomes an architect of a transferable asset over time.
I absolutely love that framing. Transformation, not transaction. Building a business that survives you is the ultimate goal.
It really is.
But again, putting our evaluator hats back on, we need to look at what she's actually contributing to the field.
Right. Factually, Kristen has strong practical applicability and a very solid public footprint.
What's her platform look like?
The text verifies she hosts the Beyond Average podcast, and she has carved out a distinct niche in empowering women entrepreneurs, helping them double their revenue and build those crucial successor teams.
That's huge.
It is. That is concrete, measurable evidence of taking an idea from strategy to action.
But if we look closely at the originality of the ideas, what's the deduction there?
Well, the inference we have to draw is that her brilliance lies in synthesis, not necessarily pure invention.
Meaning she's putting the puzzle pieces together?
Exactly. Her approach is highly effective, but the text suggests it relies heavily on combining existing frameworks like DISC and EPI's own value acceleration methodology, rather than inventing entirely new intellectual paradigms from scratch.
She is a master integrator of tools. Which, frankly, is exactly what a struggling business owner needs. They don't need a new philosophy. They need a roadmap out of the trenches.
Absolutely true.
But in the context of a pure thought leadership rubric, maybe that scores slightly differently. Now, if Kristen gets the business ready to survive without the owner, our final nominee asks a much darker, much more profound question.
Yeah, this is where it gets deep.
How does the owner survive without the business? Let's introduce Jerome Myers, the founder of Exit to Excellence.
His background is fascinating.
It is. Now, the baseline facts on his background are intense. Factually, he previously built and led a $20 million division inside a Fortune 550 company.
That is no small feat.
Not at all. He has a serious, heavy-hitting background in private equity acquisitions and corporate recapitalizations.
So he knows the math.
He knows the math cold. But his core case for this award has nothing to do with the math. Factually, it focuses entirely on what he has coined the founder's exit paradox.
Right.
He firmly believes the hardest part of an exit isn't the financial deal itself, but the massive loss of identity and structure after the paperwork is signed.
Yeah, the emotional cliff.
Now, I really have to push back here.
Oh.
We are evaluating an award for the Exit Planning Institute. This is an industry built on EBITDA, tax mitigation multiples, and legal structuring.
Sure.
Isn't an exit supposed to be the finish line? You get the check, you go to the beach, you sip your pina colada. Why on earth would an award in a hardcore finance industry go to a guy who essentially sounds like a life coach talking about feelings?
That is exactly the pushback the industry historically gives. And what is fascinating here is how Jerome dismantles that assumption using his own background.
How so?
He calls the beach and pina colada dream the transaction illusion.
The transaction illusion, I like that.
The illusion is the belief that a financial achievement alone delivers clarity and fulfillment. Think of it like an astronaut.
Okay, I'm tracking.
You train your entire life to go to the moon. It defines every waking second of your existence. Then you land on the moon, you plant the flag, and you come back to Earth.
And nobody tells you what you're supposed to do on a Tuesday morning for the rest of your life.
Precisely. Factually, Jerome brings entirely original named intellectual property to the table to combat this post-exit void.
What kind of IP?
The text details his creation of the NEXT model and the 6 centers of doubt. He realized that founders were self-sabotaging their own multi-million-dollar deals at the 11th hour.
Wait, they were backing out of deals?
Yes, not because the math was bad, but because they were terrified of who they would be without their company. So he built proprietary, structured frameworks to help founders navigate the psychology of selling their life's work.
So he takes the abstract terror of identity loss and gives it a tangible, systematic structure.
Yes, and if we look at his ecosystem impact, the evidence is massive. Factually, he serves on the faculty for the Exit Planning Institute itself.
Oh, so he's teaching the advisors.
Exactly. He is on a university advisory council. He is a global speaker for major executive organizations like EO, Vistage, and XPX, and he hosts the Your NXT podcast.
Man, so when we combine his resume with his philosophy, what does that tell us about his standing in the industry?
The inference here is what makes him so potent. Jerome uniquely blends high-level psychological transition work with hard-won, private equity corporate credibility.
Right. He's been in the trenches.
Because he was the guy in the boardroom doing complex M&A deals, the finance guys have to listen to him. He isn't an outsider preaching about wellness.
He's an insider.
Exactly, an insider who looked at the mechanics of M&A and realized the human element was fundamentally broken. That combination makes his thought leadership deeply resonant on a human level, while still commanding absolute respect in a room full of bankers.
All right, we've laid out the core cases. We have the macro financial strategist, the operational integrator, and the identity alchemist. It is time for the scoring table.
Let's run the numbers.
As promised, we are evaluating these 3 nominees across 7 specific dimensions to see who objectively pulls ahead.
I've run the analysis based on our discussion, and there are some fascinating gaps here.
Let's start with originality of ideas.
For originality of ideas, Jerome scores a 9.
Makes sense?
Yeah, he is bringing completely original trademark IP to the table with the founder's exit paradox and the NEXT model.
Where do the others land?
Kristen comes in at a 6. Her value is immense, but the inference is that it's largely a synthesis of existing tools. Todd scores a 4, as his work appears reliant on executing standard, albeit complex, comprehensive planning.
Got it. And what about distinctiveness of niche?
Jerome again takes the lead with a 9, for zeroing in on that highly overlooked post-exit psychology. It's a blue ocean space.
Totally.
Kristen earns a solid 7 for her focus on trapped operators and empowering women. Todd gets a 6 for his specialization in insurance and annuities.
Now, evidence of influence and public-facing footprint are absolutely critical for a thought leader. I mean, you can't be a leader if no one is following you.
Exactly. For influence, Jerome scores a 9. The facts show him on global stages and university advisory boards.
What about Todd?
Todd scores an 8 because you simply cannot discount the sheer reach of a Fortune 500 network of financial advisors. Kristen scores a 6, with her influence primarily concentrated within her coaching practice.
Okay, but for public-facing footprint, I imagine the gap widens.
It does. Jerome gets a 9 for his podcast and global speaking. Kristen gets a 7 for hosting the Beyond Average podcast. Todd drops to a 3.
3.
Yeah, the evidence heavily suggests his footprint is entirely internal to Thrivent.
Okay, let's talk about credibility within exit planning. This feels like a heavyweight fight between Todd and Jerome.
It really is. Jerome scores a 9 due to his private equity background and his status as actual EPI faculty. Todd also scores a 9. You simply cannot argue with 24 years at a massive institution like Thrivent and that exhaustive list of financial designations.
True.
Kristen earns a 7 for her proven track record of preparing companies for ESOPs, that's employee stock ownership plans, and doubling revenue.
But on practical applicability, meaning how easily can the average advisor or owner actually use this stuff tomorrow? Kristen has to take the lead, right?
She does. Kristen takes a 9. Her systems are immediately scalable and actionable for a struggling business owner trying to buy back their time.
And the other two?
Jerome scores an 8. His NEXT model gives much-needed structure to psychology. Todd also scores an 8, as tax efficiency and product strategy are deeply practical necessities for any deal.
Finally, collaboration and ecosystem impact.
Todd wins this category with a 9. His entire philosophy revolves around mission-driven partnering and managing a network of outside specialists.
Right, the general contractor.
Exactly. Jerome scores an 8 for his faculty work and executive group outreach. Kristen scores a 6, as her focus seems more dialed into the singular entrepreneur.
Let's put the full scoring table up so we can see the data side by side. Dimension Todd Yeiter, Kristen Carlson, Jerome Myers.
Originality of ideas, 4, 6, 9. Distinctiveness of niche, 6, 7, 9. Evidence of influence, 8, 6, 9. Public-facing footprint, 3, 7, 9. Credibility and exit planning, 9, 7, 9. Practical applicability, 8, 9, 8. Collaboration ecosystem, 9, 6, 8.
Looking at this matrix, the data really starts to separate the pack.
It paints a very clear picture.
The scores are locked in. Now it's time to make the call. We've looked at the facts, we've broken down the underlying mechanisms of their philosophies, and we've run the numbers. Based purely on the criteria for Thought Leader of the Year, I need you to make the definitive call.
Okay.
Who is taking home the award in Nashville?
Based on a rigorous, criteria-driven evaluation of the text, my definitive prediction is Jerome Myers.
Okay, lay out the absolute strongest evidence-based argument for why Jerome takes the gold.
It comes down to the literal wording of the award, taking ideas from strategy to action and acting as a leader.
Right.
Jerome perfectly hits this by identifying a massive, totally unaddressed gap in the industry, the psychological collapse of the founder, the transaction illusion, and creating specific, actionable, trademarked frameworks to solve it.
The NEXT model.
Exactly. Furthermore, his footprint as EPI faculty and a global speaker for organizations like EO and Vistage fundamentally cements his status as an active, public-facing leader shaping the future of the profession. He is changing how exit planners talk to their clients.
But let's look at the blind spots. What is the strongest fact-based counterargument against Jerome winning?
Well, the counterargument is the historical gravity of the industry itself.
Meaning the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exit planning is, traditionally, a deeply structural financial and legal space. It's about maximizing EBITDA, tax mitigation, and deal structuring.
Hard numbers.
If the EPI voting body inherently prefers hard financial mechanics over psychological transitions, Jerome's focus on identity and life after the deal might simply be viewed as too soft to warrant the top thought leadership prize.
Right. If they view it purely as a finance award, the guy talking about feelings might get passed over.
Exactly.
In that case, who is the most likely runner-up? I'd argue it has to be Kristen Carlson.
I'd agree with that.
She provides highly actionable operational changes that directly create tangible enterprise value. If the voters want someone who builds more resilient, profitable businesses right now, her methodology is incredibly strong.
Kristen is a powerhouse, no doubt. However, we also have to consider the institutional swing factors.
Like what?
Well, if the EPI decides they want to reward corporate-scale reach and massive ecosystem building among financial advisors, Todd's network could easily swing the vote.
Ah, because of Thrivent.
Right. We're talking about a company with massive assets under management. If the voting body leans toward recognizing the sheer volume of influence within a massive financial infrastructure, Todd becomes a major threat to win. #tag bottom line.
All right, let's bring all this analysis together. For those tracking the awards, here is our official bottom line.
Predicted winner, Jerome Myers.
Confidence level, 85 out of 100.
And why? He completely dominates the criteria for a thought leader by introducing highly original trademarked concepts, specifically the founder's exit paradox, and actively championing those new ideas across a massive public footprint that includes global speaking engagements, podcasts, and his role as EPI faculty. Hashtag outro.
So what does this all mean for you? You might not be a certified exit planning advisor. You might not be a founder looking to sell a multi-million-dollar company.
Most people aren't.
Right. But whether you are prepping a business for a massive sale or simply navigating your own career transitions like changing jobs, retiring, shifting industries, there is a profound lesson here from all three of these nominees.
There really is.
It's about building a solid foundation, relying on a trusted team, and most importantly, not allowing your entire sense of self to be defined by your current professional role.
If we connect this back to our opening thought about the astronaut landing on the moon, I want to leave you with a question to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If you were to step away from your defining professional role tomorrow, with all the money you would ever need, the giant check fully cleared in the bank, who exactly would you be on day 2? Have you prepared for the transition or just the transaction?
That is a question that sticks with you long after the paperwork is signed. Thank you for joining us as we evaluated the field, explored the mechanisms behind the methods, and made our call. We'll see you on the next deep dive.